Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back once again to the Movie Battleground. I hope you guys enjoyed our Battleground Blitz event last week. We had two great matches go up. I'm not going to spoil them yet, but you got to see myself go up against Noah McCausland, and you got to see Sean Hunter go up against Abel Deleu. Again, no spoilers just yet since it's only a week removed. Go check it out if you haven't, though, because it was a hell of a time. But we are back once again with another great matchup, and we have two guys who are in the 1-0 bracket who have played very well for themselves coming into today's match. We have Jordan Owens, who started off by being one of only five rookies, as in five rookies got paired against former champs, and Jordan was the only one who came out with a victory, taking down Papa West. He's since gone on to rack up a second victory to be 2-0 and be at this point in the tournament. Jeremy, meanwhile, out of all the players, has been the literal buzzsaw. He is 2-0 with two knockouts. He's yet to see a fourth question or a point loss. However, it might be the night that at least happens, because Jordan is a hell of a competitor, and I think we have a hell of a matchup between these two guys. I think the records speak for themselves and who they've played, so I don't need to hype this up anymore. I'm going to go ahead and bring them in, and introducing first with a record of 2 wins, no defeats, and 2 knockouts, he is Jeremy Adams coming into it. Jeremy, how is it going, sir?
It's going great. Yeah, I'm excited to be back and to try to get to the next round of this thing. But like you said, I've got some tough competition, and it's going to be a heck of a fight tonight. And I hope I'm ready for it.
Absolutely, I would say you're more than ready for it. As has been said, you're literally the only perfect competitor thus far, and I don't say that to prop any more pressure onto you, because I know you don't think that way. Hopefully, you're still great no matter what happens. But you've had a whirlwind of a start, and just how has that made you feel confidence-wise coming into it?
It's obviously a bit of a boost to the confidence, to have been able to do that, and hope the judges have been understanding my arguments and hearing what I have to say. But on the other side of it, it's like I feel like there was more work to do this time. I think we got each match, I think the questions, the topics get a little tougher, and I think we really had some interesting topics, and there's some stuff that's going to take some real heavy debating on this one. So I know I've had to up my game. I haven't in any way rested on my laurels and been like, oh, I knocked those guys out, I'm good to go. I know that that doesn't go that way. You may be top dog one day, and then the next day you take your foot off the gas and everything goes to hell. Believe me, I've been there in that situation, so I know how it goes.
Absolutely. You're not the first competitor to say the questions get harder, and that wasn't by design, but I guess it kind of works out as it is a tournament. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and send you to the back and introduce your opponent. And introducing his opponent with a record of 2 wins, no defeats, cat in hand, he is Jordan Owens coming in here. Jordan, how's it going?
Who's a good debater? You're a good debater. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I'm sorry. Did we start? Yes. Hello, Aaron. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you back. And obviously, per your request, we have decided to officially retire the French fries nickname. However, you did mash some potatoes last time in Caleb Hansen, and you are here with a 2-0 record. How are you feeling coming into this after 2 solid wins?
No, man. I've been having a lot of fun. Much love to all my past opponents. I see I'm facing someone who's got a perfect round, so that's my one goal. I'm going to try to end that perfect streak. We'll see how it goes.
Hey, stepping stones, not a bad goal, but we will see how it goes. This is one I am certainly excited for as I go ahead and bring Jeremy back in. You can show your cat some love behind the scenes as I'm going to bring up a graphic. Movie Battleground is the best of 5 rounds. It is a first to 3 points to win. Each debate round is worth 1 point. If a competitor does happen to get 3 points in a row, that is a victory by knockout. And if it is a 2-2 tie at the end of the 4 rounds, we will go to the blind round. Both of these competitors know a little something about one of these things. as we're going to go into the rules of the regular debate. The competitors were given, 4 questions in advance. They've been given as much time to prep as they could conceive using, and they used it how they chose to. The way this will work is they will have 1 minute to open their argument. That'll be followed by 2 minutes of a chance to kind of explain and expand on that argument, with a 4-minute open debate following, where they can go back and forth, trade blows, and get as many points in as possible to impress our judges, followed by 1 minute to close and surmise their arguments. With that said, when it's all over, I will send these guys to await their judgment in the back. The judgment tonight will be done by 2 great judges, Mr. Chris Diaz and Mr. Chadwick Webb. Should we need a third deciding judge, I will also be taking notes and making my own decisions, but I will only come into play if we happen to have a tie. With that said, though, competitors, do you guys have any questions, or are we ready to go? All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. And we start with focus on an actor who we have discussed before on this show. And we have a first in Movie Battleground history, which if anyone watching remembers the matchup, you will immediately know what the answers are, because this is the first time that we have had a category, in this case being an actor, receive the same 2 answers as a previous time it's used, but in a totally different context, which is incredible. We have seen these 2 movies match up before under a different context, so anything you may have heard in that context by those competitors, throw it out the window, and we're going to listen to it in this new context. The question is, what is Adam Sandler's most overrated film? All right. Now, with that said, because we are still using random wheel spin generation until we reach the semifinals, Jordan, you were spun into the higher seed, which means you were deemed the favorite, and you have chosen to go first on this question as well as question 3. Jeremy, you will go first on 2 and 4. So with that said, I will go ahead and bring up your timer. I will make myself disappear, and Jordan, time will start when you begin speaking.
Where'd you go? So yeah, as a '90s kid, I'm an unabashed Adam Sandler fan. I've seen everything he's done. Actually, I haven't seen Shakes the Clown. Other than that one cameo, I've seen everything he's done. And I went with Grown Ups as his most overrated film. It was his first sequel, despite all the other movies that have a great fan following. This one got the first sequel. This made, I had to write it down, 270 million plus at the box office worldwide. This thing has a fanfare, man. There's a big class of people that love this movie, hence why it got the sequel, which also made a lot of money. And it's referencing his song tribute to Chris Farley. And I don't get it, man. These are nothing movies. They're throw so much at you with a huge cast, all funny people amounting to pretty much nothing. There's so many more movies that just offer at least something. Even his mediocre ones, and these are nothing, man. There's just nothing really to laugh at lowest common denominator.
And that will be time. Jeremy, I head over to you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Okay, well, I think on this one you have to start with the term overrated. What does overrated mean? And for me, I in no way think that most people would identify overrated as being box office or overall popularity. To me, overrated is what you look at when you're looking more at like critical response, the film community at large. If you go just to random people, that are film lovers and ask them about a movie, what's the general consensus you're going to get? That to me is where you look at when you look at overrated. And for that reason, I immediately, when I was looking at Adam Sandler, threw away all of his comedies. I wouldn't say that any of his comedies are really what you want to go to if you're going to talk about overrated, because none of them really did well with the critics. And I think even the people that love Adam Sandler and enjoy his movies look at his comedies as kind of silly, fun, time waster type movies. I don't think they're looked at as serious cinema, even by his fans. So I had to go to his more serious, dramatic work. So I picked Uncut Gems, the most loved movie among critics, the highest Rotten Tomato film, and the one that is the most overrated.
All right, there we go. Uncut Gems, since it was brought in there at the end, Uncut Gems is the choice going up against Grown Ups. For the context of those missing it, if you want to see these two movies match up in a more positive context, they were argued about in a blind round for Adam Sandler's best performance in a match between Evan DeGraff and Steve Mesa. Go check that out after this.
Who
We're gonna
picked
shit on
Grown Ups for best performance?
it. Was a blind round. He didn't know what he was doing.
Okay, then I'll accept it.
And he still won. All right, with that said, Jordan, all right, we're going to go back to talking bad about these movies. Jordan, time starts when you begin speaking and catch your breath.
I need another minute after you told me that. Okay, no, I'm good. No, I kind of figured the argument Jeremy was going to make here between what's overrated between critics and fans. The thing is, I'm definitely going to talking more about the fans because this is a positive movie over at Rotten Tomatoes for fans, and there is a fan base. Box office sometimes does show because people came back for the second. People want a third for some reason, a big amount of them. When you watch Adam Sandler's the stand up on Netflix, and he does the Chris Farley song, and he says, Grown Ups 3, it gets a pop because people want a Grown Ups 3 for whatever reason, and there's definitely a fan base for these movies. On Uncut Gems, it's at least it's a great ride, and even if you find it a little overrated, I still don't feel at the worst case scenario it's that overrated, even if you're super harsh on it, because there's at least it offers something. When grown-ups for some reason can make this money and build this fan base and become probably a trilogy in the next couple of years, that's where I consider overrated, because it's an odd move when you have these movies that are just one after another of just kind of whatever. I guess we'll throw a party. Steve Buscemi again will be a quirky character here. So that's where I come in for overrated here. Is there is a love for these movies here, particularly this one. Being the first ever sequel that we got. You know what I mean? Despite the fact that there's love for all his other characters, this was the first one that Hollywood felt the need to fast track based on crowd response, based on just getting. I think the ensemble cast here, I think, is what sold it, because you had your Schneider and your James and Spade, and kind of got in their minds the best of both worlds, and it created a sequel that had probably even less to offer. So that's why I go with Grown Ups, man, because there's so much more potential for him in comedy, and this is probably the best case scenario of, like, why is this one that catches fire?
All right, that'll be 2 minutes. Jeremy, back to you for the same time.
So let's talk about Uncut Gems. This is a movie, just to put it in perspective, directed by the Safdie brothers, who had made independent dramatic films previously. When it came out, it made $50 million on a $19 million budget, which is probably about a really great gross for a dramatic film, for not one of Adam Sandler's non-comedies. This was by far the most well-received out of the group of those films that he's done. This movie had a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. It had an A- cinema score. That means that all of the people coming out of the theater that saw this, that were polled, gave this thing an A. This movie was absolutely loved, and when I want to talk about why it's underrated, I want to talk about something called Emperor's No Clothes syndrome, which is basically people watch a movie, they get wrapped up in the movie, and they think this is like the greatest thing. So this film, he plays a guy who is a fast-talking jewelry store owner who is a gambler, and on one night he gets in this really stressful situation. He's trying to get himself out of a financial bind, and all of these terrible things are happening to him. And I think people were kind of this is so suspenseful. This is so interesting. Adam Sandler's so good in this. But it's kind of like, you can look at movies like La La Land. People love that movie, that musical, and they thought it was so great. But if you go back and look at the movies that inspired La La Land, classic musicals from the 50s and stuff, you can see that that's kind of the Emperor's New Clothes. Like, that movie's not that great when you really put it in context. And Uncut Gems is actually, I would argue, not as good as another movie that the Safdie brothers made called Good Time, starring Robert Pattinson, which is a very similar, it's all in one day film. film, but Robert Pattinson plays a more interesting character, a character who's more of a lowlife. Adam Sandler, I would argue, is more of a one-note character in Uncut Gems. And then if you look at the other films that Adam Sandler has starred in, I would say that Punch Drunk Love is his greatest dramatic work, and that movie was not that well received when it came out. It had a D- cinema score in theaters, and I think it's a far better film. And all of the talk that people had about Uncut Gems, basically he got snubbed for Best Actor Oscar. Where was that talk with Punch Drunk Love? That's the movie he got snubbed for. Uncut Gems, there's a lot of issues with this film.
Time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open debate. The timer will start ticking when the first person speaks.
Jordan, Jordan, I just want to say, I think you made when you're talking about overrated, you made two mistakes here. First off, you picked one of his comedies, which I think they're not overrated. They have the people that like his movies, but again, they're not like, if you look at a drama or something that's critically acclaimed, that's where you go to when you're looking at things that are overrated. And then the second thing that you did is you picked one that is not one of the movies that really people love. Like you're saying it has a big fan base, you're saying people want a sequel, but people love Billy Madison. People love Happy Gilmore. People love The Wedding Singer. Like, these are the movies that people quote. People do not quote Grown Ups and Grown Ups 2. People do not have a following and a love for that movie the way that they do some of his other comedies. And I wouldn't even pick Billy Madison because it wasn't, the critics didn't like it at the time, and it has a fan base, but it isn't like a movie like The Godfather or something. Like, these are the movies that you go to when you're talking about overrated, not silly comedy.
That's very unfair for you to just go, comedies out of the window. And we got to talk about drama and prestige and history. That's very a one-sided argument.
Is it his most overrated comedy?
I'll let you speak. Let me speak a little bit now. You got to look at it from both sides of the coin. And this is one that I think is a great example because this made a bucket load of money. And you talk. First, I want to actually, if we can cut out his 30 seconds from his last argument and place it for me, I would love it. Because you're talking about Adam Sandler and Uncut Gems, and you rattled off all the things that people like. So just because you are now comparing it to old school things and saying, oh, it's not as good as Good Time, which I think it's better than Good Time because it has a little bit of a bigger budget. I think it has a more interesting character and a way better conclusion than Good Time. It's them improving on kind of a formula they already set up. And you kind of said all the things that the people liked. The critics liked it. The fans liked it. Like, evidently you did it, so you might be the person that thinks it's overrated, but not by the majority standard by any means do people consider this an overrated film.
But if more of those people watch Good Time, and if more of those people watch Punch Drunk Love, and more of those people watch the movies that inspired,
people did say they wish he got an Oscar. It's the Jim Carrey syndrome. For whatever reason, despite doing Truman Show and Man of Moon,
that inspired Uncut Gems, like there are movies from the 90s, like Falling Down, all these movies that
doesn't make this a bad film, though. I always hate that argument of saying
not as good.
This movie's not as good because there's classic cinema in the background. It doesn't make this a bad movie.
He plays a one-note character. He plays a character who's just basically a gambling addict, and the movie doesn't have anything to say about it.
You compare Grown Ups to the Blended character to the 50 First Dates character, you can't tell the difference. These are all Adam Sandler being Adam Sandler.
Exactly, and the Adam Sandler fans like those movies the same way. The people that like Grown Ups like those other movies.
You look at stuff like a Blended or I'm trying to think of a Pixels. They didn't have great reviews. That's why there is no Pixels 2. That's why they didn't follow up with another.
Grown Ups had 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. Grown Ups had terrible reviews, and if you're going to
again, you're looking at it from that critic's perspective, which is understandable. It got a positive fan review. Fans did like it. And there is a younger generation. I'm of the generation, yes, I'm quoting Billy Madison. People do quote Grown Ups. I want to get chocolate wasted. I still hear that from people. Kids and teenagers, which is what they're kind of going for. And, that middle-class America do like it.
Uncut Gems is a movie that is up here. It is, the people were ecstatic for this movie, and it is not that good because it doesn't do as well.
But the only thing you backed up was your opinion that it's not good. I haven't really heard how other people think so.
Because let's look at Robert Pattinson's character in Good Time. This is a guy who is trying to get his mentally disabled brother out of prison, and he makes all these horrible decisions to try to make this happen. He's a bad guy, but you feel for him, and he's really got this situation that you can really relate to. Adam Sandler in Punch Drunk Love is this really fascinating character. All he's doing in Uncut Gems is he's a gambler, and he keeps screwing up and getting himself in hot water.
He's not as much of a likable character.
It's not as,
we're at
it
the point
doesn't
in
have
cinema.
anything
We don't
socially
need a
to
likable
say
character.
about
And
it.
I
It is
still
a
feel
movie.
like you're
It's a movie that
constantly
people
comparing
watch.
it to Good Time. Let's talk Uncut
It's a
Gems.
movie that
Let's stop
people watch
comparing
and they
things.
get sucked into it, but there isn't any there. It doesn't have anything to say about him or the topic.
And time.
It's
All right. We're going to go on to the 1 minute closings. Jordan, you're up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Again, Jeremy made some of the same points that I'm making as far as Uncut Gems was well liked by audiences, by fans. It's a different role you've ever seen Adam Sandler in. Even in worst case scenario, if you want to say that movie's overrated, you still, I feel truly, the majority, 99% of people wouldn't say it's that overrated. Maybe it's not the greatest movie of all time, but it's still pretty darn good. It's interesting. It holds you. It's an improvement on some of the formula they set up for Good Time. Well, Grown Ups is the same shit you have been given, but even worse. I would watch Blended again. At least Pixels had kind of an interesting concept that it failed. Grown Ups is just, there's nothing to the script. Chris Rock even made a joke about how he wrote Top 5 because he was so bored by doing the filming of Grown Ups 2 and felt like he had nothing to do in that movie. The joke with Kevin James is that Chris Rock is that he got to drink a little bit more Pepsi on his birthday or whatever. Like, there's nothing to these movies, but they are liked. It is positive as far as fan wise, and it made so much money that we're gonna end up with 3 of them. That's overrated by getting 3 of these movies.
And time. All right, Jeremy, back to you for your final minute. The time starts when you begin speaking.
If you talk to Adam Sandler fans, there are a lot of other movies that they like. He said Blended, all these other movies that people like more than Grown Ups. Grown Ups they went to see because it has Adam Sandler and it has all his buddies in it. And it's a throwaway fun time for Adam Sandler fans, but it's not a movie that they love. With Uncut Gems, you're looking at a movie, yes, people said all these good things about it, but the movie, if you really look at it, you put it in context, it's not as great. And anytime you have a movie that's that loved, it has further to fall. Over time, it's going to drop. There's going to be a backlash against it, and they're going to look at it and see that it's really not as great as they thought. Grown Ups is not in any way overrated. Even the people that like it, they're not going to tell you it's a great movie. They're going to tell you it's a throwaway, silly movie that they kind of like. Even that's its most ardent fans. The greatest fan of Grown Ups is going to tell you that it's really not that great. They just go to see it because they like Adam Sandler. And it's, he kept talking about what a terrible movie it is. That exactly, how can it be overrated if it's a terrible movie that every critical community hated, and which the fans, yeah, they like it, but they like a lot of his movies. Like, his comedies make money.
And
that is not overrated.
All right, guys. Hell of a first round. Right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and send you guys to the back, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in our 2 judges. So normally this would be the moment where I fact check the 1,000,001 things these guys brought to the table, but because I'm trying to judge them, it'd be stupid of me to try and be on my phone looking shit up. So I have no fact checks. You're going to take what they said for their word tonight. But with that said, Chris, I'm going to go ahead and go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main thing that sold you?
In the end, Jordan got my vote.
First vote does go to Jordan. Chad, I go to you. Who does your vote go to?
Yeah, this was a fire round. They were going back and forth so hard. It was really, really rough. It was very evenly matched. I love both of the approaches that they were taking. It was a very different way to argue overrated either way. I also went Jordan here, and it was just because, I felt like, he had a really good point about why is this the movie that gets all these sequels where you have other great comedies that he's done. And I feel like, he just hammered that really, really hard and said that Uncut Gems, it doesn't have to be a likable character to be a good movie.
Okay. All right. So the first vote does go to Jordan. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys to the back and bring in our competitors, as we're going to go ahead and move on to question number 2. And we are going to be going to a realm that I feel like a lot of people don't go near nowadays. Sorry, I'm trying to erase my board while also hosting the game. We're going somewhere that a lot of people don't go, and as someone who just finished a history of film class in school, I certainly went there a lot. We're going to go to classic cinema. Specifically in classic cinema, we're talking about what is the best film directed by director Billy Wilder. So with that said, Jeremy, you're up first on this question. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the timer, and it will tick when you speak, sir.
Okay, for those who don't know, Billy Wilder is one of the great directors of the classic period of cinema from basically the 1940s through to the 1970s. He's a guy who made a lot of really serious, socially conscious dramas, films like The Lost Weekend and Ace in the Hole that dealt with real issues in a dramatic way. But he also made a lot of really zany, silly comedies that are lots of fun, films like The 7-Year Itch. But I think if you're going to take a look at what his greatest film is and what the highest peak of his film career as a director, you look at a movie that is all of that. It is a socially conscious drama, and it is also a very funny comedy, and it balances all of that amazingly. And that is the 1960 film The Apartment, which stars Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. It's a film about Bud C.C. Baxter. This is a guy who works at a big company, and basically he is a guy that has an apartment in town, and the executives there have their affairs at his apartment, and he has to stay out while they're happening. But as the movie goes on, this is a guy that learns to stand up for himself, and it's an amazing, amazing film that really holds up today.
And
it's his greatest achievement.
All right, Jordan, back to you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Yeah, excuse me. As Jeremy kind of set up here, yeah, Wilder's one of those directors that I think is pretty good about range, from doing some fantastic drama work, but also being really good at comedies. That's why I went with comedy, the one nearest and dearest to my heart. Some Like It Hot. This is one that I think in comedies can be a tough thing to relate to and still hold up. And I think this is one based on Jack Lemmon, who is so great in anything you kind of give him. One of my favorite actors. This thing still holds up as far as just being hilarious and with one of the greatest endings of all time. Nobody's perfect. Still a joke. That's still a quote that's said today, and a movie that holds up. Just the ride you go along to, and as far as directing wise, kind of a grander scope of seeing how we can direct a comedy with a lot of different sets and locations. And just really adds to the resume of him, and it's something that I think still holds up as far as the top comedies of all time.
All right, and that will be the opening minute. We're going to go on to the 2-minute expansion. Jeremy, you're up first.
Okay, so as I was starting to get into, so The Apartment is the movie that Billy Wilder made after Some Like It Hot, which was a big hit comedy that he made. But instead of resting on his laurels, he decided to be really ambitious and tell this story about this guy who is letting people take advantage of him, and he falls in love with the elevator woman in the building he works at, played by Shirley MacLaine. And it turns out that she's actually having an affair with the big boss at the company. And when he throws her over, there's a part in the movie where she actually is in Jack Lemmon's apartment and she tries to commit suicide. And you would think that this would be like the most serious Syrian drama you've ever seen to deal with that kind of material, but the way that it happens in the film is touching, and it ultimately brings these two characters together. And there's a lot of comedy involved with it, because the doctor that lives in the apartment next door thinks that Jack Lemmon's character is having all of these affairs. So there's a lot of really great humor from that situation. And the movie just has an amazing cast. Fred MacMurray plays the big boss, and this was a guy who had been known for Disney movies at that time, and he plays one of the all-time great heels in this film. And also Jack Krushkin plays the doctor next door. A great actor, Ray Walston, plays one of the guys in the office building. And this film, it's a perfect screenplay. Just from scene to scene, it is so well just done. There's nothing in this movie that feels extra. And if you're talking about a movie holding up, I showed this film to my wife, and she was absolutely captivated. There's nothing in this film that's dated. It doesn't overly make like references of the time. And it is so a human experience that we can all relate to. And it's dealing about how people people in the corporate world, in the financial world, they look at the eye on the prize, trying to get ahead, and they don't really, make the human choices, and they sacrifice stuff that they shouldn't be. And that continues today. There's so much going on in the world today that this movie calls back to. And the Jack Lemmon character is personally an inspiration to me, because he is somebody who is just getting walked over in life, and he has to change that and ultimately earn the love of a woman. And it's a great romance on top of everything else. We'll get into Some Like It Hot, but this is a more zany comedy that has some more dated elements.
Time. All right, Jordan, back to you.
I don't know. I don't want to just act like I'm just saying it to say it, but like I would say the apartment doesn't necessarily date well in certain aspects. The final sequence gets a little bit too sentimental and sappy for me. It also is not something that is just super easily accessible at 125 minutes. You do feel the length here, and with some of the cynicism in it. I don't know. I feel like you can kind of feel it, and it's not something that you can kind of show anybody, at any time. Not that necessarily cinema should be, but Something Like It Hot zips along at a really great pace. You got him, Tony Curtis, and then Marilyn Monroe, and just the ride you go along with there. I just think is, like I said, it zips along to where you're ready for the ride. While The Apartment, I feel it's it's a play. It's also not necessarily. Well, it's directed well. It's also, a little bit more of a minimalist as far as directing wise, and I don't know. I'm trying to think about it. Jack Lemmon's able to show and I'm struggling here. I don't know. I'm gonna I think I already lost by admitting that. So I don't know what to say for this round. Really, I can't really even. I don't really have much more. I don't know what to say.
You can concede and go to the 4 minutes if you'd like.
I concede because I fucked up already.
Doing good, Jordan.
All right. The round is not over. We do have 4 minutes of open debate. The timer will restart. Believe in yourself a little bit, buddy. Time will start when the first person speaks.
Yeah, I'll just say about The Apartment. If you're engaged with these characters, I don't think it feels long at all. I think that every moment adds to the growth that these characters go on. And I would say it's actually one of the least sentimental romantic endings, because basically these two characters end up together on New Year's Eve at the end. And instead of a big, loving, emotional get together, it's not that. They just basically sit down and they go to play a card game, and Shirley MacLaine says, "Shut up and deal," which is an equal line to the closing line of Some Like It Hot. I think it even is a better line because it connects with the characters and how they're these damaged people that they're in love, but it's not the sappy, everything's gonna be great. Their life, they're just gonna have play cards and try to be together and try to make the best out of a world that's not that great. And I think there's stuff in Some Like It Hot that is more dated, because there's a whole storyline in that movie involving gangsters. There's a guy named Spats Colombo. There's like wacky banquet scenes that detract from the main plot of Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon trying to, win the love of Marilyn Monroe and be in this situation. I think that there's stuff in that movie that's extraneous. And there's a whole thing with Tony Curtis basically trying to win Marilyn Monroe in disguise by being this playboy guy. And he's basically doing an impression of Cary Grant because he had made a movie with Cary Grant. So he's doing this goofy Cary Grant impression. But if you don't know that and have that history, you don't really understand what he's doing. And it's not convincing that he would be this wacky, silly guy and win Marilyn Monroe. Like, it's obviously there's an in joke there, but if you're in 2021, you're not going to pick up on that the same way. There's nothing like that in The Apartment. You get the emotions of the characters and what they're doing all the way through. It really holds up.
I will argue you all day that your line is not better than my line. Who says "shut up and deal" anymore? That's not true. Point to me.
Well, if you see the movie, a lot of people haven't seen the movie, and it's beautiful in the context
And
of that
I
film.
also haven't watched it in a while, and it shows.
But yeah, the only other things I just want to say, like, there are movies that are great in their time, but they walk so other movies can run. And I feel that Some Like It Hot, basically, it was a drag comedy, but it was just a prop, basically. It was just these guys dress in drag, to serve the plot of this movie. But the movie really didn't have anything to say about it. And even though it gets into some potential homosexual material with one of the characters, it's just a joke, basically. And yeah, you could say that's a great line at the end of the movie, but later on, we're going to get movies like Tootsie that has more to say about gender roles. We're going to get movies like The Birdcage that is equally funny, but you're more emotionally invested. It has more to say.
Without Some Like It Hot.
And
they if
did
we
it
don't
better.
have Some Like It Hot, then we don't have bosom buddies.
I don't
and
agree.
If we don't have bosom buddies, we don't have Tom Hanks. And if we don't have Tom Hanks, we don't have joy. And if we don't have joy, we don't have this battleground. Point to me.
Amen. And I would just argue that you would still have those movies because that is subject matter that's always going to exist. And those movies actually were able to do it better without getting distracted with extraneous stuff and really have more to say so that you're emotionally touched while you're laughing. And I think that The Birdcage and a movie like Kinky Boots are movies I would more heartily recommend if you're going to talk about drag movies and transvestism movies and stuff like that. Some Like It Hot, it was more that it was good in its time and people still laugh when they watch it, but it isn't a great film like other films that have tackled that material and like other films that Billy Wilder made. And like I said, The Apartment is a more full expression of his gifts because he did do cynical stuff like Sunset Boulevard. He had these more cynical things to say about our society, but The Apartment marries that with the humor of Some Like It Hot, and it has a positive message in the end. You can be a screw up, you can be stepped over, but you can step out of that and you can actually make a change in your life.
Yeah, well, Kinky Boots really is good. I agree. So if you haven't seen Kinky Boots, go watch that. Why I fell in love with True Telegia for.
All right.
And that, yeah.
I'm going to call time with a few seconds
left. 6 more seconds.
Give you guys a chance to collect your thoughts. We do have the closing period. Jeremy, you have a minute if you'd like it. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Look, this is the thing I've been wanting to say ever since pick this topic and pick this film. We come onto this show on the Battleground so that we can debate movies and try to win our arguments. But I'm going to tell you right, I'm going to step outside of that, take all of that aside, and honestly, from the heart, if you have not seen The Apartment, please watch this film. It is a really great film. It really has so much to say today about the choices that we make in our lives, about women who are taken advantage of by men. There's so much that this movie said in this time when that was the society. It was a terrible reality for women, and Billy Wilder had the strength and the balls to say that women are taken advantage of in the workplace. The guy who runs the company just uses her and throws her away, and that was so normal then, and that movie shone a light on that, and it gave us Jack Lemmon. I think it's one of the greatest performances ever in film because he's so funny, he's so goofy, and yet he has such a heart, and he's able to be the man that these other quote-unquote men cannot be for Shirley MacLaine's character, and it's so powerful. Please watch it.
All right, and that is time. Jordan, you have 1 last minute on the clock. The time starts when you begin speaking.
Some Like It Hot. It's awesome. The Apartment. Awesome. But not as awesome. I succeed.
Okay, short, sweet, and to the point there. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and send you both to the back, and I am going to bring in our judges. And with that said, Chad, I'm going to go ahead and go to you first. Who gets your vote and what sold you?
I mean, what would you do if I said Jordan? No, it's definitely Jeremy. I mean, Jordan kind of like was, doing something there at the very beginning, just making big statements about comedy's hard to do, which is true. But like Jeremy had so much passion about, The Apartment and Billy Wilder, as he should, because he's a great director and that's a great movie. But yeah, I mean, Jordan just kind of threw it away. I guess he didn't really prepare. And so, yeah, Jeremy kind of blew me away with his argument there.
Yeah, Chris. Normally I go third, but I'm gonna overrule you for the sake of time and just say my vote goes to Jeremy. Just so we can save the time. I'm sure yours does as well. We're gonna go ahead and move it on. Thank you guys. As we'll go into the next one.
I'm going to challenge those rulings.
I will say, I think your intro is really strong. I like where you were going with it, but that
1000%.
was what it was. Some great debating, nonetheless, by Jeremy. I've never seen somebody fill up that much time while their competitor is letting them have it, which is impressive in and of itself. It shows the passion behind the film. And if we learned anything from that round, I do want to follow the sentiments of both my competitors. As somebody who had to watch both of these films in addition to Sunset Boulevard, please check all three of them out. They are some legitimately great films. When I saw you guys pull these two up, I was like, oh, the ones I've seen, perfect. This will be something I can understand. But with that said, we move on from that fight and we move into another round. And it is kind of funny that you bring up Tom Hanks in the last round because we're going to go to a guy who's worked with Tom Hanks quite a few times. But in the last couple of years, he's kind of become known as a bit of a dud, whether it's directing the absolute weirdness that was Welcome to Marwin or The Witches remake that didn't really go anywhere on HBO Max. Robert Zemeckis was a once esteemed director who's kind of fallen apart, I feel like, reputation-wise over the last 10 years and fallen out of those esteemed graces. And so that is why we move on to the next question. Speaking of those recent films, what is the best Robert Zemeckis film released in either the 2010s or the 2020s? Now, obviously, that's because only one film came out in the 2020s. I decided to include it as an option for the competitors, although, spoiler alert, neither of them went with it. And let's go ahead and take a second to focus on the once esteemed director behind films like, obviously, Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Forrest Gump, Castaway, and despite the fact that his reputation has been tarnished a bit in the general public, let's talk about two great recent films he made. With that said, Jordan, you are up first on this one, and don't give up on yourself, buddy. You're doing better even when you think you're not. Do not give up on yourself, all right? We're going to go ahead and pull up the timer, and it will start once you begin speaking, sir.
And I'm back. All right, so I decided to go with Flight for starring Denzel Washington in a role he got nominated for. You know, when you say Robert Zemeckis as some of the movies you just mentioned, Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future, what do they both have in common? You think, to a degree, at the top of performances, effects, and whatnot. This is a more grounded, character-driven story for once, R-rated too, which is not something he does super commonly as well when you really think about it. And yeah, just the performance at the forefront here, as well as even the side performances from John Goodman and Cheadle are great. But Denzel, it's absolutely fantastic as this guy, who again you could try to dislike him because you know he is doing drugs and he is kind of putting lives at risk. But Denzel has that kind of charm and swagger to where you're very interested in seeing this character and maybe seeing him kind of come out of this trial of whether or not you know he did commit technically a crime here. It's probably the most interesting thing Zemeckis has done in a while. The kind of movie that gives you hope for future Zemeckis movies.
All right, and that is time. Jeremy, back to you for 1 minute on the clock.
When you talk about the quality of a director's films, I think that directors are best when they play to their strengths. And one of the greatest strengths of Robert Zemeckis, what I think really inspires him as a filmmaker, is pushing cinema forward visually in terms of just the cinema technology and the craft of filmmaking. And he made a film in 2015 called The Walk that starred Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And this is the true story of a man named Philippe Petit who walked on a wire between the World Trade Center in 1974. There was a great documentary about it, but the documentary that they made was kind of dissatisfying because because they only had photos to really recreate this amazing thing that this guy did. But Robert Zemeckis took it upon himself to actually visually recreate for us, as if it was happening, what this guy did. It is one of the most visually arresting and amazing sequences that takes up a big chunk of this movie. It really shows what he can do as a filmmaker to put you in this situation and make it feel absolutely real and thrilling. And this movie is far more in his wheelhouse than Flight, which I'll talk about as a movie that's more of a chamber character drama, addiction drama, which is really not what Zemeckis is as great at doing.
Time. All right, Jordan, back to you for 2 minutes, sir.
You talk about playing to your strengths, and Jeremy is right. The sequence when you finally get to him doing the World Trade Center walk is visually cool, especially if you saw it on a big screen. Not many did, but if you did, it was visually cool. And then everything else is where it kind of falls apart and it becomes a forgettable movie. All the way lead up to it, and then everything is just kind of fine. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, arguably not doing the greatest accent. Could have gone with an actor that actually does, have an accent like that, but they didn't. I love Gordon-Levitt, but you know what I mean? Like you said, you are kind of distracted by him trying to be this guy that he's obviously not. And the whole just setup, like I said, it's not that enthralling. Once you get to the one cool visual moment, it's cool. But otherwise, this was a movie trying to be an Oscar bait. He mentioned the documentary saying it was unsatisfying. It won Best Documentary at the Oscars. The Walk trying to be Oscar bait got nothing. I don't even think it got anything visual. It definitely didn't for Joseph Gordon or any of the cast. Flight is a movie. You start off, with Denzel, and he has that swagger, but he's a different Denzel than you've seen before. Going through that addiction, great dramatic trial moment towards the end when it's a trope, but when it's done so well, and that's the thing with Zemeckis. You see something like this or Marwen, that's kind of where it starts to kind of fall apart, is when he goes outside of just visuals. Like Marwen's a cool idea, just like The Walk is a great concept for a film, but I feel like it needed a little tightening with the character development, with the why does he do the exact walk in general, and I feel like it's lacking here. You get to know Denzel, you even get to know his best buddy in John Goodman, and it's not your stereotypical kind of Zemeckis film. It's the much more character driven, where you are enthralled by him. And then Joseph Gordon-Levitt and his character, based on a real life guy, it's more interesting to learn about the actual thing than see the movie that kind of tries to heighten certain elements, and it just kind of misses that emotional cue that I think Flight does a pretty good job of getting you to care about its main character.
All right, and that will be time on the 2 minutes. Jeremy, back to you.
You're going to knock The Walk for being an Oscar bait movie that really didn't go over. That's absolutely what Flight was. The Walk actually did better with critics. It has a higher Rotten Tomatoes score than Flight, and Flight was going for the big Oscar push, and it didn't really get anywhere. And you were talking about how my movie, The Walk, is a big visual effects thing, but then there isn't much else. My big visual effects thing is what the movie is building to. It is the end of the movie. You have a big scene, a plane crash scene, which is at the beginning of your movie. The movie kind of shoots its load with that. That's the most interesting, amazing, exciting part of that movie. And then it goes into an addiction drama, and it's not a good addiction drama. It's a movie about this guy who he's going to get in trouble with the air union and the other pilots, and he's trying to keep it together, and it's very rambling. There's a scene with a cancer patient in a stairwell that doesn't add anything. There's a relationship with a woman played by Kelly Riley that really doesn't add anything dramatically to the movie. You keep talking about his best friend John Goodman. John Goodman shows up in one scene as his drug dealer, and I'm sorry, it's not some of John Goodman's best work. It is a ridiculous character. This film, it plays a portrait of addiction, which is this guy just takes everything and does everything, takes cocaine, any kind of alcohol. It's not realistic about it. The Walk is a heavily researched movie, and if all you got is that Joseph Gordon-Levitt's accent is good, that's not much to go on, because he gives a wonderful performance. He's got the energy, the life, the spirit of this real life guy. The real life guy was involved in putting this movie together. It's very authentic in what it's doing. doing, and it's a build. You get involved with this guy. He wants to do something amazing. He wants to create something for the world in a really difficult time in Vietnam. He wants to put something beautiful out there. You get wrapped up in that. You get wrapped up in the spirit of this guy, and the movie just builds and builds and builds until he accomplishes this thing. Flight it's a good scene at the beginning with the airplane crash, and then it's just wallowing with this guy, and it's not Denzel's best work. He's been better in other films. If you compare it to like Malcolm X and stuff, he was very focused in that. In this film, he's a little underwater trying to do some not very well written addiction scenes.
And I apologize on the lateness of the timer there. But we will go ahead and go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer will tick when the first person speaks.
I know how you could say it didn't get anywhere. The Walk got nowhere as far as nominations. Denzel got nominated, so did the screenplay. So you can't knock some of the great juicy dialogue moments because it got nominated for a screenplay because there is some great moments, including, it's weird, you knocked the guy in the stairway, James Badge Dale. It's a great moment. I don't know what you mean. That's a great dialogue moment. One of the things that adds to the screenplay nomination. It
doesn't add anything to the story, and a lot of movies get nominated for screenplay. It didn't. They got its nomination, but it's really, there were a lot of other critics that maybe were on the Oscar board that bashed this thing. And you know who bashed this thing?
For yours. A lot of critics. Yours was not super well reviewed either.
A lot of critics were blown away with what he did, and going back to old Zemeckis being able, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Back to the Future, these great visual, enjoyable films, which is what he does. He doesn't really specialize in the drama stuff, and just to talk about, you know who is very critical of your movie? Pilots. This is not a convincing or realistic portrayal.
You know who sees the majority of movies? Non-pilots. All right, you can say that for many aspects.
That speaks to the quality of the movie because they didn't do their work. They didn't do their work.
Doesn't make it a bad movie to like the other 99% of the country.
It makes it.
I don't get your visual
not
thing. As
good.
You say mine blew my load by doing the plane sequence at the beginning. That's because that's not the forefront. Your movie is kind of nothing, meandering, great sequence, cool, we're done. My movie is, hey, here's a cool visual sequence, and it's adding to the story. That's just a part of it. And that's where he can shine visually,
and
then finally
do the rest of it great.
Character.
And it's at the beginning. That sequence is enthralling, and then the rest of the movie is a not particularly well done addiction movie.
It's enthralling from the visual aspect.
When you don't have the authenticity, you can't.
You're wrapped up in this guy, and you get to that courtroom, which
you can't buy into the fact that this guy is going to be high. To be high and drunk as a pilot and do what he does is not realistic. He would not be able. The pilots that were, talk about this movie, talk about how he wouldn't make it 2 days as a pilot. It's not a convincing film. The way that he is an addict.
You're really subdued on that pilot thing. I guess I didn't have any pilot friends, so I think the movie does not really fly dramatically. It's not convincing. It's not well done dramatically. My movie, it is really well researched in the fact of who these people were, of who this guy was, and what his passion was. This is a passionate guy. He gets these other people. Charlotte LeBon plays his girlfriend. He gets this whole people around him, and they're all enthused and excited about what they're doing. They all have a great energy, as you said. Ben Schwartz, his girlfriend, but at the same time, they're just these characters. They're just there. They're never really amounting to anything as far as adding to their story.
What did the scene in the stairwell? What did that add to the movie? What did Kelly Riley
add to the movie? It's a great scene,
but it doesn't.
At the very least, you're entertained by it. Where the other movie they never really amount to anything.
The airline would not bring in John. The movie completely loses credibility when they bring in John Goodman. The airline people bring him in.
A lot of people love. That's why it pops right to my head.
It's a ridiculous scene.
Such a small amount of work. When you're in the movie that much, but you pop in the head that quickly, it's a good, fun performance.
It's absolutely ridiculous, and this is a movie that wants to be taken so seriously, and it doesn't do the work. It doesn't do the dramatic work to really be convincing with this story. It's something that people can watch and enjoy on some level, but it is not great cinema. The Walk is a movie that did the research. It got the guy involved. It did all of the work to show who this guy was, and the point of the movie is to be a visual oral experience, and that is what he's good at, and he directs.
That last
stuff
15,
he doesn't direct James Badge Dale and Kelly Riley.
It is not that first hour and change. It's not. The
It-
documentary is
But
much
the last
better. It's
hour of
much
your
more
movie
talked
isn't
about.
enthralling, dude. The last
Documentary is
hour of
so
your
much more
movie
talked
is
about than that movie.
very mixed
Still
up.
to this
Kelly
day,
Riley.
you ask somebody about that story, they're going to recommend you Man on Wire. They're not going to recommend you The Walk.
No, that might be your opinion, but that was not the opinion of
It is.
the audiences that went to see the movie. Again, this is a
Disagree.
movie that got an A-
It is
cinema
that
score.
that's
People
heavily
coming out of
considered
that
by
theater
Morgan.
loved
And
that
time.
movie.
All right, we're going to go on to the 1 minute closing. Jordan, you are up first. Timer will start when you speak.
My movie starts out with Zemeckis' strengths as far as visually, but that's because that's a small part of my movie and my story. It goes on to a great character study of addiction, of a guy, again, kind of like Uncut Gems, that is doing some bad things, but you're enthralled in this character, and that's just and the visual is, you forget about that visual. You walk away thinking more about Goodman, more about that final scene, than you do about the visual. Well, The Walk is a movie where it just kind of meanders. It's cute. It's fine. Gordon Levitt, I love him. He's got great energy, but again, he's distracting. Just like Ben Platt was distracting because he had the makeup. He's distracting because he's got the accent. So you're never totally sucked into the character or any of the side characters that aren't as fun or as well written. You remember Goodman. You remember Badgedale in the stairwell. You remember Cheadle. You don't necessarily remember anyone from Schwartz to his girlfriend because they're just there. It's not super well written or planned out. And then you have one cool visual moment towards the last 10 minutes. Watch the last 10 minutes then. My entire movie, I think, is just much more enjoyable. And again, I truly feel like a lot of people would say, watch the documentary. There's a reason the documentary was still loved, and your movie was forgotten.
And time. All right, Jeremy, you have the final minute. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Robert Zemeckis in Flight got a script that was very disjointed and really kind of a mess. This is a movie that they didn't do the research about what addiction is. They didn't do the research about being what an airline pilot is. And though, the movie has its fans, apparently Jordan is one of them, it's a mixed bag of a movie, and you have to wallow through a lot of addiction scenes that really are not that exciting to watch and really are not realistic. There are much better films about addiction. The part that really sings in that movie is the airplane scene, because that's what Zemeckis knows. But when he went to The Walk, he had the research, he had the people involved. It completely paints the picture of this time period. You get to know the main character, you get to know his group, and it all builds to this great climax. It is a well-constructed movie. It is a movie that really has something to say. Flight doesn't really have anything to say. It's just, this guy's an addict and he gets busted. My movie has so much to say about the human spirit, and we need this movie in the world that we live in now. When the towers came down, it was such a tragedy. We can go back to this time where there was hope, and we can try to rediscover that. Let's do something beautiful. Let's put something great into the world. These are the things that he's good at doing.
All right, guys. Once again, another great debate there. I'm going to go ahead and send both of you into the back, and I will go ahead and bring in both of our judges. With that said, Chris, I go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main thing that sold you, as concise as you can get it?
It went back and forth, but again, Jeremy ended up winning it for me. Like, his argument at the end kind of sold at me. He kind of tapped Flight off front, and him bring up many things about the people being involved with The Walk and everything. He made a better defense than I think Jordan did in the end.
All right. So first vote does go to Jeremy. I go to Chad next. Who gets your vote, and what sold you?
Yeah, this one was another heated one. It's so crazy to watch these. But yeah, they both hit where they said both their movies have really great scenes that stand out from the rest of the film. But what really hit me was actually Jordan, because Jordan said that when you watch The Walk, you kind of would rather be watching the documentary that's more accurate or something like that. And so I just felt like he had a lot of stronger rebuttals on his side.
All right, so it's a 1-1 vote, which means it will go to me. And again, I will say you guys were very, very close throughout the battle. But after kind of looking over everything, I am going to give the vote, and that means the point will go to Jordan on this one for me. I think both of them did a great job at attacking each other's films, but I think because there was a lot of discussion over the big visual centerpiece, obviously the airplane sequence versus the walk sequence, when it came down to talking about the rest of the film, I thought Jordan did a brilliant job at defending the attacks that came at his film, and that overpowered it in the end for me against Jeremy. But again, very, very close as the two of those rounds have been. Judges, I'm going to go ahead and send you guys to the back and bring back in our competitors as we move on to the fourth and final question. And we go into this one, and we are going to be talking about a genre of horror that I feel like has been becoming more and more prominent in recent years, especially over the whole jump scare craze that really existed in the 2000s. But we're going to be talking about some gems that may not have been seen. The question is, what is the most underrated psychological horror film? And as I have prefaced before, I am going to preface one of these answers, for those of you who do your research, is technically a Netflix film, but as has been deemed in previous rulings by the show, any film that goes to streaming, obviously during the pandemic, but any film prior, as long as it is made by and contains filmmakers and actors that are of a theatrical caliber. This isn't an instance of somebody who's never had a theatrical film made a movie. This is an instance of a filmmaker just going to Netflix for this project. They are fair game, and so that is why it has been selected. But with that on the table, Jeremy, I will go to you first for this question. As I bring up my timer, it will start ticking once you begin speaking.
What would you think if I were to tell you that Anthony Hopkins gave his greatest thriller performance in a film that was not Silence of the Lambs? That's right. There is a movie that is so forgotten now. It came out, it had its day, but it is a movie that most people have never heard of, and it's called Magic, and it came out in 1978. And this is a film early in Sir Anthony Hopkins' career. It's a film directed by Richard Attenborough, of all people, the guy who's known for directing Gandhi and going on to be an actor in Jurassic Park and stuff. And this is a really wonderful, underrated, underseen, forgotten film about a guy who is in entertainment and he wants to be a ventriloquist. But the movie kind of has a wrinkle when he doesn't want to go on a TV show, his next big break. Instead, he's going to go kind of play in the Catskills. And you find out the reason is because he has to take a psychological test to be on the show. And he can't do it because he has a very unhealthy relationship with his dummy, which his name is Fats, the dummy. And Fats is an amazing character. And this is a really involving, amazing movie that gets really scary and really psychologically crazy as it goes on.
And time. All right, Jordan, back to you for your pick. The time starts when you begin speaking.
Yeah, so I went over, the list of what was kind of possible, and I had to go with something that I actually slept on for a little bit called Gerald's Game. This stars, of course, the wonderful Carla Gugino. It's based on a Stephen King novel, and I just wasn't sure if I would be enthralled by a movie that's set primarily in one bedroom. But Mike Flanagan, who came off of a great horror film called Hush, and did so good in this that he was actually given Dr. Sleep, another Stephen King novel, because he faithfully adapted this. It's just such an engaging tale of a woman who is trapped in her bed. So there is the realistic aspect of what if you were kind of stuck in this situation. You're somewhere where no one's really around, and then of course has your Stephen King twist and vibes to it. And the husband of course starts talking to her, and there's a great debate as to did she really see this big monstrous guy? There's so much going on here, and again you have a performer like Gugino who, kind of like Toni Collette, could have been Oscar nominated if this was more of a theater movie and horror was given its respect.
And time. All right, Jeremy, back to you for 2 minutes. Time starts when you begin speaking.
So yeah, Magic is a film that was based on a book by the great writer William Goldman, who wrote the book The Princess Bride and the screenplay. He also has a Stephen King connection because he wrote the film Misery. He wrote this book Magic, and he wrote the screenplay for the film. And it's such a beautiful adaptation. It basically takes this idea and it's so well put into film because you're following Anthony Hopkins, you're seeing him play this guy and his dummy, and that it's such a wonderfully nuanced performance, and it goes to that extra level because he also has to do the voice of the dummy, and the dummy is such a distinct character, and he's so devious, and it's like you almost forget that it's his dummy. You get to really wrapped up with this character, and he's trying to have a bit of a career, try to keep going. He tries to romance his high school love, played by Anne Margaret. The movie has a wonderful supporting cast. Anne Margaret is so great in this. Burgess Meredith from the Rocky films plays his agent. One of the great scenes in the movie is where his agent said he's worried about him. He thinks that he's losing it psychologically, and he's like, if you can just have a conversation with me for 5 minutes without your dummy talking, then I'll know you're okay and we can go forward with everything. And just watching Anthony Hopkins' desperation as he doesn't want the dummy to talk, but that dummy's going to talk. It is so great. And as the movie goes on, you said psychological horror film. Well, it can't just be the psychological film. There's actually got to be some horror in this movie. And as you get deeper into it, there's some twists in this thing. You get to look, maybe he's not just crazy. Maybe there really is something horrific and supernatural going on. And the way that the movie kind of slowly eases into that, like a slow slide into hell, is so great. And I'm talking about Anthony Hopkins' wonderful performance. People don't know this movie. Like why was this movie forgotten? It did okay with the critics at the time, but not well enough. Roger Ebert was unfair to it at the time. This is a movie that is so unique in Anthony Hopkins' career. It's so unique in Richard Attenborough's career as a director. It really deserves to be discovered. But, we're going to talk about Gerald's Game. Like, that is the most underrated psychological horror film. That's not even the most underrated psychological horror film that in a Stephen King adaptation. Like, there are more underrated Stephen King films than that one. That movie is actually overrated, and I'll get into more of that.
Time. All right, Jordan, back to you.
I feel like again we're about to fight about what's overrated here. Again, I know scores don't matter here, but on both critics and fan wise, it is higher on Rotten Tomatoes because it is a really engaging movie. I know it's made more recently because I think it helps that it does hold up. Your movie is an interesting one. It's a great earlier performance by Hopkins that maybe is a little forgotten, but it is a little clumsy. It is a little bit of its time. It could use updating. I could see definitely a younger generation not being able to totally get into it, and I think that's maybe why it's been one of those movies of like, oh yeah, it has its fan base, but it's not necessarily something that I think anyone is shoving anyone towards. But if you tell me, hey man, I'm on Netflix, I like horror, if Dummy and Gerald's Game are options, I'm still sending you towards Gerald's Game here. Hopkins gives a really good performance in yours. Carla Gugino, who runs the gamut of one of those great. There's definitely other people in here. Bruce Greenwood as the husband, who they're trying to reconcile, maybe not. But Carla Gugino is front and center here, and that's what you need in a movie where it's spearheaded by far by one particular actor or actress, and Gugino's the perfect choice there of someone who goes through these motions of maybe giving up, fighting back, dealing with like, am I losing my shit? You know what I mean? Seeing the Moonlight Man is a great little add-on here. And what's really interesting about mine too is it's a great adaptation of a book because it takes out any kind of clutter. It focuses on a few different great aspects and does it well, even to the point of like there's even kind of like an epilogue here. Like you could tell where like the book would have an epilogue. There's an epilogue in the movie as well. And it does great little add-ons to make you think again and go, oh, maybe that's what, and it's still to the very end, it's dropping these nuances and these very interesting things here. Dummy a little more straightforward, and I think for more forgettable anyway. As far as these two, Gerald's Game's one you're kind of thinking about for a little while longer and pondering. It's something you want to talk to people and show people.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute debate. The time will start when the first person speaks.
Again, overrated. That Gerald's Game is a movie that people are going to be, continually watching just because of the Stephen King connection. It's a Mike Flanagan Stephen King film, so people are going to watch it. Magic is a movie that
it's Mike Flanagan's first Stephen King film,
no fault of its own, people have forgotten about, but it is a great movie. And you say that it doesn't hold up for people today, but it absolutely does because Anthony Hopkins is so great, and the movie isn't just the psychological part; it is also the horror because some things happen, some inexplicable things at the end that are so out of nowhere and so amazing, and it's like
that's where I like
they
my
actually
too,
went there.
inexplicable with the dummy and whatnot. There's a lot of great like real horror in mine too that I'm quite a big fan of her, having
Here's the
it,
problem. Here's the
basically
problem with your
rip off the skin of her hand
the
to
problem
try
with
to
your
get out of
movie
these
is
cuffs. There's a lot of great moments like that.
It's a sensational, sort of thing that there's a sensational elements in your movie to get people to watch it, but it's really unrealistic. Like the fact that she couldn't get out of those handcuffs.
Unrealistic. Your movie's about a dummy. We can't be talking unrealistic this round.
It's way more convincing what's going on with this guy throughout the movie. Like you're convinced that this guy is just a crazy guy, and then that all it very gradually brings in supernatural stuff. But with your movie, you have to buy into the fact that a lady cannot get out of handcuffs.
Why Stephen King? Okay, if we're arguing more, Stephen King.
Within a few hours, dogs are like going to eat her husband. It's like it's stuff it's sensationalistic.
Oh,
when you really think about it, it's
a good story.
It purports to be really realistic horror, but it's really kind of ridiculous. And you said it's a great adaptation when it really isn't, because Mike Flanagan he so loves Stephen King that he puts stuff in there that it doesn't need. It doesn't need the epilogue. The movie, if you compare it,
took exactly the right moments he needed and crafted a good story. This is one that Stephen King's good with. Hence why they like that. You say it's a Stephen King, Mike Flanagan movie. That doesn't exist without this movie, because he went on to do Dr. Sleep because they were happy with this. They were so good with he knows how to condense what could be a huge book and story into a tight, nice hour and a half, 2 hour movie.
People went crazy for it. It's overrated. People went crazy for that movie, and they were, there are things in it that they like, so they're glomming onto it. But compare your movie to Misery. Misery is an adaptation by the same guy that wrote Magic, who knows how to completely tell a story that is so focused and so perfect.
Over Misery.
No, absolutely not, because Misery ends right where it needs to end. It doesn't tack on an epilogue that they felt they had to put on because it was in the book.
You're not in the epilogue, but that was one of the reasons
not going to age well. There's stuff in your movie.
I don't think you're having conversations and having a lot of debate with your friends, and it's not something I would push necessarily a lot of people on. Maybe I'd say, hey, throw it on your queue, get to it when you can. Gerald's Game was a movie that I was so excited about. I wanted to discuss it right afterwards because of the psychological elements, because of the human elements.
I'm trying to get people watching Magic for 20 years.
Performance. What else you got?
I've got so much. I've got a wonderful supporting cast. I've got a well told story. But your movie, it rests on these like gore scenes, but it also brings in all of this material. It brings in all of this material. I'm sorry, involving sexual violence against children, and the movie doesn't earn it. It wasn't earned in the book. It's not one of Stephen King's best books. It's a little icky the way that it tries to use that material.
We're talking about an adaptation. It improved upon the book because it was tight.
It doesn't, because that material it's shoved into the movie in a way to try to add something to what's going on, but it's icky to try to make your movie more thrilling by having sexual violence against children. Does not really make it a great movie.
It seems like that's the thing. It's going no. It is saying a lot more than that.
It makes the movie overrated because it's not, that material is not going to age well with this film. This film is something that people glommed onto when it came out, but it's not going to age well because it puts this stuff.
Dummy's the one that I don't think you could show a current graphic.
Because ventriloquist dummies are terrifying, dude. And this was the first movie that really did it great. It hasn't even been done better than this. It's a really scary concept that's done well with no extraneous stuff, and it isn't mired in.
It gets very extraneous towards the end there. It does.
No, it doesn't at all. It absolutely, the way that it builds to the reveal is amazing.
And time. All right, we're gonna go on to our 1 minute closings. Jeremy, you are up first. The timer will begin when you speak.
There are movies like Needful Things and The Dark Half that are Stephen King adaptations that were savaged by critics, didn't do very well in the box office, that are really great movies. The Needful Things is a terrific film. It has Ed Harris and Max von Sydow, and people have forgotten this movie. That's underrated. Gerald's Game is a movie that the critics went crazy for. People are watching it on Netflix, but when you really look at it seriously and analyze the movie, it's overrated because it rests on gore stuff, and it has an extended epilogue just because it was in the book. It has sexual violence in the story that detracts from it, and that it's just thrown in there to be more titillating. But that's not what makes a great movie. My movie, it has a great build. It is not rated as it should be, and I would recommend it to anybody. Maybe Jordan didn't enjoy as much as I did. He said the same thing about me with Uncut Gems. I'll say that back to him. Anthony Hopkins gives one of the performances of his career, and he is one of the greatest actors ever in the genre. And this is such an amazing thing. And that final scene in Magic is so much more a great capper than his movie.
And time. All right, Jordan, you have the final minute on the clock. The time starts when you begin speaking.
My movie is well liked by those that have seen it. That's why the majority of the people that have seen it have rated it higher than your movie in general, both critics and fan-wise here. But that's still a small amount. There's still, I feel like, so many people that didn't jump on it. They are now maybe finding it slowly but surely, knowing like, oh, it's the same dude that did Dr. Sleep, and his previous movies like Hush were also really well. This guy knows how to do a movie. Hush is another great example of something but where it's one character. We both have great performances here. Gugino's is a standout. It's both were kind of snubbed. The final scenes, you want to talk about my epilogue. I love my epilogue when things are attached on like a Lord of the Rings and you're just like, let's wrap this up now. Yeah, but mine gives you a little more nuances as to what exactly happened here, what happened there. Did she really see the Moonlight Man? And it keeps you thinking, and it wants you to make you discuss things. And the psychological aspects as well as the human aspects. You mentioned all the sex stuff. Unfortunately, it does happen, and it added to the story, and it's just a part of the big overarching story. Your movie's cool, but I feel like it is kind of the definition of forgettable and fine. Mine makes you think and sticks with it.
And time. All right, guys, another great debate there from the two of you. I'm going to go ahead and send you to the back and bring in our two judges. And Chad, you are up first this time. So in as concise a way as you can get it, tell me who gets your vote and what sold you. And you are muted.
Sorry about that. I am a huge Mike Flanagan fan, and I absolutely adore Gerald's game. I think it's just as good as Misery. But that being said, being about the arguments here, I actually had to go with Jeremy on this one. And the reason being because I thought that he did a really good job saying that, well, I didn't agree with any of it's overrated stuff, but saying that it was highly rated by critics. But like Anthony Hopkins gives a baller performance in Magic. I have seen Magic. It is a great movie. And he does give a great performance in that. And he kind of alluded at the very beginning that it's not as talked about as like Silence of the Lambs and stuff like that. And no one talks about Magic. So it's kind of like the most underrated. And it is a good movie, and he explained that pretty well.
All right, so the first vote goes to Jeremy. Chris, I go to you as concise as you can get it. Who gets your vote and what sold you?
Yeah, Jeremy did credit Jeremy because he thinks to the fact that underrated. And he pointed out the credit rating and everything. Jordan didn't really talk about Habit, but Jeremy came about underrated. He just that people like it, that kind of oversimplified what the credit really is, make it sound more overrated. But Jeremy wanted the end.
All right, so we got a second vote for Jeremy, which means the second point goes to Jeremy. Thank you, gentlemen. I will send you to the back, and I will bring back in our competitors. And the 2-2 tie means that we are, in fact, going to the blind round. Here is how it works. In the blind round, this is a question that the competitors have no predisposition or exposure to. The way that they have no prep time except for the few minutes that they will be given once the question has been revealed. The way that it works is I will give them a generalized prompt of a question. The example that I have used in the past is name me a Will Smith film. Off of that generalization, you will give me something that qualifies for it, and then you will be given your more specific question. No matter whether you agree or disagree with your choice for that question, you will have to do your best to debate it, and we have seen plenty of upsets, so it is 100% possible. Once you guys have your picks, you will go off screen for a few minutes. You will have time to put together a semblance of an argument, even if it is just a few minutes, and then we will come back and debate. Debate rules stand as they did in the first 4 rounds. With that said, gentlemen, are we ready, or do we have any questions?
Yes, and just what a great fight today, Jordan. It's been an honor, no matter what happens.
Good stuff, man. Absolutely. Good stuff.
All right. And just so you guys are aware, I don't say this to discourage you from speaking first, but the way we will determine who does go first is whoever submits their answer. And as I've said more than once on the show, the way the blind round question selection kind of works is I input a question into our show notes and it stays there until it gets used. And it just kind of worked out that this one is also horror related. Our question tonight is I need you to name me a film from the Halloween series of films.
Halloween 2018.
Halloween 2018 comes in first from Jordan.
I'll go Halloween 78, the original.
Halloween 1978 from Jeremy, coming in as the second prompt. All right, gentlemen, the question you will be debating is, what is the worst movie of the Halloween series? So as a reminder for our competitors, it is Halloween 2018 versus Halloween 1978. Certainly a debate I don't think we'd ever see happen, but here is the gloriousness of it, as both have to fight the uphill battle, which I don't think has ever actually happened. I think it's either been both select, generally speaking, one they want, and then the other is kind of lopsided, or both are good. But that is the question. What is the worst movie of the Halloween series? So as I said, for the viewers watching, it'll be just a matter of seconds. For our competitors, they will have a few minutes to put their arguments together, and then we will come back and debate, and we will see you for that in just a moment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. What has been a matter of seconds for you has been only a matter of minutes for our competitors. But they are back. They are ready to go. And I'm glad I set the little interlude to elevator music because that does not match the theme of this at all. If I wouldn't get sued for using Halloween's theme, I would use it. We are arguing the blind round question. What is the worst movie of the Halloween series? As a reminder, the competitors on the basic prompt of Name Me a Film picked Halloween 2018 and Halloween 1978. So as we go ahead and get into it, Jordan, because you answered first, you will be going first on this round as I go ahead and bring up your timer. And I do want to say to both of you, you guys have played a great game tonight. To make it to this point in the debate is impressive because it happens very rarely. So best of luck to both of you. May the best debate win. Jordan, your time starts when you speak.
Halloween, man, has been a franchise of ups and downs. I've been around for the ride pretty much my entire life. I was excited for 2018 because I'm not a big Rob Zombie fan, so I was excited for another reboot. And here we got Jamie Lee Curtis back. Looked like it was going to maybe honor the original. And then I saw Danny McBride, and at first I was like, "Oh, cool! I love Danny McBride. He's writing this, sweet." David Gordon Green, his track record. I started off really good filmmaker, and then started making Your Highness and other things like that. And track record, and that's where this movie really is. Just it lets you down, man. You think it's gonna go back to its roots because of Jamie Lee Curtis and like the way they talked in the press junkets, but it doesn't, man. This feels like just a blood-soaked, unnecessary sequel here. The comedy is forefront to a large degree with the little kid to some of the shit the father says, Toby Huss. And you don't really know what movie you're watching. And most importantly, it's not scary. It's just going for kills that are
And time. All right, Jeremy, over to you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
There are a lot of movies that are big hits when they come out, and people, enjoy watching these movies. But just because they have a legacy and just because they're enjoyed by certain fans doesn't mean, if you really look at them, that they're great movies. And that is true for a lot of classic horror films that people love. When you actually look at these movies, they had a cool idea, they had a cool premise, they did something new, but they're really not good movies. And the worst movie in the Halloween franchise, if you actually look at the filmmaking, if you look at the acting, if you look at the plotting of it, is actually the first film. Because this film, it was just something that John Carpenter was hired to do. He never knew it would be a phenomenon. He was just doing a work for hire. It is the most basic. Guy gets out of a mental institution and kills babysitters. The acting in this film is really subpar. Jamie Lee Curtis is okay, but she would get so much better as an actress, especially in later Halloween films that she was in. Some of the dialogue that Dr. Loomis gives in this movie is laughable. The teenage girls, Annie, Linda, they're all really ridiculous characters. It's one-note characters. It's not the movie everyone thinks it is.
All right, Jordan, back to you for 2 minutes. Time starts when you begin speaking.
How dare you, sir, try to slander the name that is Dr. Loomis? You want a doctor that is one of the worst characters in horror cinema, Dr. Sertan, and that twist. That's what's wrong with this movie here. Your movie is an OG, and it built a legacy for a reason, because it uses what it has to effectiveness. My movie thinks it's trying to be clever, funny, unnecessary twists that just ruin what you have set up in the past. You ruin what you would hope in your go-to for back to its roots. Your movie, it sets the groundwork for what is many to come. Is the reason there's 96% voted on Rotten Tomatoes. There's a reason why horror fans that are even younger than me will still laud this movie, and there's a reason why people are more and more, especially as the years go by, and you look at my film, go, this is not a good movie. This doesn't do anything to elevate the genre. In fact, it takes it back several steps. It makes you want at least the dialogue you had from the first movie here, because this one is trying to shoehorn in jokes and characters you don't care about. The kill counts. I like the fact that my kill count is less than, I think it's like 5-6 kills in my movies. Yours is over around the 15 mark. Why? Because there's disposable characters that are there simply to get stabbed. I'm sorry, my movies, they're there simply to get stabbed, move on from, and you don't care about them. You have characters that go missing. There's a boyfriend character that is set up who just disappears at some point in my movie here. You set up stuff with the sheriff that doesn't get paid off. And Sartan is such a dumb twist. It's an unnecessary of them going, instead of let's make a movie like yours that knows where they're going, knows what kind of plot and what we want to make, my movie goes, let's try to be smart, clever, throw in such unnecessary shit that just rolls your eyes, even from the first viewing. Even when you're doing your best to like this movie, you're still rolling your eyes several times throughout my movie, while yours knows what to do.
And time. All right, Jeremy, back to you for 2 minutes on the clock.
Let's take a step back from all the hype. Let's take a step back from all the critics in the 70s that fell over themselves for the original Halloween, and just imagine that you're a horror fan watching all the classic horror movies for the first time, watching Scream, watching all these great movies, The Conjuring and stuff that have come out, and you go back to Halloween, and the movie, if you just look at it in its base filmmaking, it doesn't hold up. The dialogue is stiff. All of the characters are one-dimensional. The movie really has nothing to say other than there's evil in the world and this guy kills people. It's slow by today's standards. That the fact that there aren't that many kills works against the movie, because you're waiting, you just keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and the payoff really isn't there. Some people get killed. The kills are not that stylish by the standards of geniuses like Dario Argento at the time, and filmmakers that would come later, people like David Gordon Green that would bring more style and more energy to the movie, to the series later on. It doesn't really have anything to say, but all of the later Halloween movies, they took it in new directions. They had things to say. If you go to Halloween H2O, and it's commenting on the disaffected teens of the 90s. If you go to Halloween Season of the Witch, which is such an oddball, interesting movie that's out of the canon, but is so cool in its own way and so unique in a way that the original Halloween is just standard guy kills people. And look at the David Gordon Green film. He talks about how he doesn't like it and it's bad and all this stuff. pound for pound better acting. Jamie Lee Curtis is way better in that movie, and the relationship she has with Michael, with what she's been through, and she's been tormented by this trauma she went through in the original film, and now it's coming back into her life. She's got to confront it again, and the trauma has torn her family apart. Judy Greer as her daughter is amazing, having to have lived with this. Their granddaughter, played by Andy Matichak, is a really enjoyable, likable character, has spunk and energy and character that the original Laurie Strode just didn't have. That movie has so much more going on. There's stuff in this film involving the news reporters that are podcasters that are trying to exploit this situation that is still relevant to today. There's no relevant messages in the original film. It's overrated. It's standard killer stuff. Your movie actually does more. It's more interesting.
All right, we're going to go on to the open 4-minute round. The timer will start when the first person speaks.
My movie does too much without ever executing any of it correctly here. You mentioned Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah, it's interesting where they went with her character here, but then she gets forgotten because you want to go with her daughter, and then you got to go with the chubby kid, and you got to go with the reporters and the sheriffs, and she becomes end up being a B character. Here with a minimalist script, so you actually kind of care. And my way more iconic scenes that you still remember with him with the sheet. Name me an iconic kill from, you know what I mean, from my movie.
The whole scene where it's Halloween night and they're outside and there's fog and all these different teenagers get caught on a fence, and just the dread that
one teenager, not different teenagers. There's one teenager. Character who again is so campy, you don't care about him because he seems like a Danny McBride character.
No, the one character gets killed, but there are other characters out there that are all in jeopardy, and the way that builds is so interesting. And that guy has way more character, and he's a more relatable, interesting, geeky guy compared to anybody in the original film.
2 scenes, hey, I got a crush.
You said
now I'm dead. Like, no, he's not relatable. You get to know the girls and the couple boyfriends, and unlike the new recent trope of horror,
so much more.
They make them so unlikable and
are
silly.
Funnier,
you don't hate anyone in the
original. More human. No, they're not characters. They're not characters. They're not well performed. They feel like
Jamie Lee Curtis became a star because of the movie here. There's a reason people kept wanting to use Jamie.
She lucked into that role, but she did so much better work later on. She did better work in the other films. And you said she gets sidelined, but it's building the world. It builds out, your movie builds out the world of this town more. It shows all these different characters. They come and go, but that's fine. That's
exactly.
What happens in a town.
You're not sucked in to what's going on with him going against these
you are sucked in because you feel like it's a real world with real characters that are going to come and go out of the story. These are real characters that are going to come and go out of the story in a way that feels like real life. They're more interesting. The acting, even the father compared to the original movie.
They go like, they just drive right by, like, oh, dad's dead. All right, and they move on. Like, everyone's such a character.
Jamie Lee Curtis gets
kind of real human beings.
Builds to Laurie taking on Michael in her ultimate last stand. That is what this movie, all the other stuff you talked about with the psychiatrist, it's just interesting. It's interesting subplot. But the climax between Laurie and Michael is where the movie ends, and that is one of the most powerful, thrilling moments of the whole series. It does so much more than what the original film does.
Come back next time. That's how your movie ends. It ends with her going out to get the fireman.
No, it's the climax. It's the fight that they have in that basement that 40 years have built to for those characters.
And then she has 40 years and she still
it's a better performance of Jamie Lee Curtis than anything she did in the original. And the family dynamics are so important to building out this world that you get involved with her daughter, that you get involved with her granddaughter. No, but those three women is what this film is about.
You care about my kids because they focus on a feel of them, and they're likable. Unlike the new trope of Hollywood, which is everyone's got to be kind of quirky and a little, and some of them are kind of douchey, and like you don't care about those kids. You care about the kids and in the original, and it sets a tone. It becomes iconic. There is no movie.
It's not about caring about the characters. It's about believing that they're real actors giving real performances, and
absolutely, because they're not showy.
It's a more relatable world.
That's why yours is better, because it's not showy. It's not trying to be like oh my god, I'm such a wacky character. No, it's like, oh, I'm a real kid in school.
Bad acting is bad acting. Your movie has good acting.
Tone.
And
yours has such
it
a
has
tone.
something to say.
Mine has all over the place. Does it want to be a comedy? Does it want to be?
It's good to have
it's good to have
humor in a horror movie. The original Halloween has
too
no
much,
humor.
though, man.
It works against it. It's
Even
good to have humor. No, it isn't too much. It's still scary.
And his babysitter's about to get murdered, and he's making jokes.
Women. The film has something to say about those three women and the trauma. That is a unique thing that threads through this movie and makes it more of a film and more of a story and more great acting.
Characters. It's the only characters they focus on.
All right, guys. This debate has 1 minute remaining for each of you. Jordan, yours is up first. The timer will start when you speak.
Yours is iconic for a reason. Yours is something, like I said, if you're a horror fan even 10 years younger than me, you can respect what they do with these characters, how they set it up, what it has led to the future. Why people were so excited for the movie that I think is worse is because we thought it was getting back to its roots. We thought these were people that were going to respect the original trilogy. And while they had a good concept, they couldn't hold to that concept. They said, no, let's throw in a twist with this doctor that's laughable. Let's make every kill get dumbed down by a joke. They're like, oh, check out this motherfucker. And then just running from, as someone gets brutally murdered. The gore is a mountain here. Mine builds. Mine leads to people and moments you care about, and scenes in the closet to the sheet scene are iconic and remembered, and how he hooks him to the door. Yours is just let's throw in some funny dick jokes. Let's get really bloody. Let's throw in some twists. Why? Because movies got a twist nowadays, and characters got to be quirky. Mine are real characters and moments you can believe, and it's just a psycho. Yours is wacky.
And time. All right, Jeremy, back to you for the final word.
Jordan is telling you that the original Halloween has real characters and story you can invest in, but that's all he can say. He can't tell me who those characters are. He can't tell me why we should care about those characters. But I can tell you, Laurie Strode is a woman who had a trauma in her life. It's haunted her. It's haunted her family. You care about what she's going through and her single-mindedness in dealing with Michael Myers. You care about her daughter, who really didn't fully believe it and now is seeing it come to life. Her mother was right. You care about this young teenager who's caught up in all this, and she's going to be the badass, and she is a better actress than Jamie Lee Curtis was in 1978. And I will tell you, there's a lot more kills and stuff in that movie that makes it more interesting. It makes it more fun. You want some humor in there, and this film is a better film. This had a 79% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's good, and it's much harder to achieve that kind of acclaim 10 movies into a franchise than when you're the new kid on the block and there hasn't been another movie like that people could compare to. That's something that's going to be overrated. To be that far into a franchise, do new things, say something about how women have to deal with trauma and their relationships. This is a much better movie when you really look at it at filmmaking level.
All right, guys, a brilliant last debate. I'm going to allow you guys to sit in the back and cleanse your souls a bit. I apologize for putting you through that, but we will go ahead and send both of you to the back as I bring in my judges. All right, guys, and so with that said, Chris, I am going to go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main point that sold you, as concise as you can get it for me?
This was a tough one, but I think Jeremy in the end pulled out the old that Johnny could have even named somebody from the original, and that what wanted it in the end for me. And like it was a tough debate, came to movie I love, but Jeremy probably at the end won it.
All right, so we have a first vote for Jeremy. Chad, I go to you. Who does your vote go to, and what sold you?
Yeah, Jeremy did probably, I think, the best possible way to try and tear down one of the most beloved horror movies ever. But I had to go Jordan with this one just because, he did a great job talking about how at the end, no one cares about that dad anymore. Like, no one cares about the characters in the film. They don't even care about their own family members. There's like weird humor, like dick jokes. It's wacky. But then he talked about like 1978, where it sets the groundwork. It has an actual tone. It's not over the top like the other one. And I just felt like there was a lot more tearing down of 2018 than 1978.
All right, which means the final vote will come down to me. And what I will start with is I think you guys, as with almost everything tonight, did a great job with the back and forth. I mean, I've never seen two guys balance it so perfectly, and you know exactly how to speak over each other, but also then kind of back off and give each other the room, which I think was a great element. I'm looking at some of the notes I took, and it's very, very close. I think against the odds of the picks, I think you guys did both do a great job tearing down the films that are, I presume you guys like, and I'm presuming are generally more positively received. But in terms of, so removing that aspect and going to the compelling defenses, I am going to give my point to Jeremy because I think he did just an edge better in compellingly defending 2018 as well as tearing down the original. Jordan did a great job tearing down 2018. I just don't think the defense of the original was, in terms of what was said here, was quite as powerful. But it is, again, it's a matter of bullet points for all of these. My judges, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys to the back because. And your winner by a final blind round score of 3-2, Jeremy Adams coming in with the close victory. Jeremy, no knockouts this time, but you do still come out on top after, as I predicted, a very tough fight. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you would think that after those knockouts, I would have been, like feeling so great about my wins. But it's like I feel so much better about this win because it was such a fight and I had to work for it so hard. And Jordan was just so well prepared and ready. And, particularly on the arguments that he won and even a couple of the ones where, I ended up getting the vote on those. He just was so on the ball and, those are, it's like when you play trivia, I enjoy the matches where we go to sudden death and I have to work so hard and have such stamina to win more than the ones where I got knockouts, because where it's just, I just had an easy win. It's like, this is where you really know you've earned it. And I really feel for the first time, like I am on the right path in this tournament. Like I really belong in this tournament. I really, am earning my way forward and if I'm not going to try to get ahead of anything, but if I get was to get to the final and get to that moment of winning, it would be like, man, I had to work for it, I had to earn it. And that's really what's more gratifying for me, and that it really all is thanks to Jordan and just how incredible he is. And it was an honor to even get to debate somebody that good.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of your progress in the tournament, obviously, you do progress on. And now that you are in the semifinals, as is standard for everyone who makes it, and as I've been saying to all the competitors at the end of their matches, now that you are in the semifinals, in order to kind of make this big tournament worth it, I've created branches for players who reach the semifinals to have more than one chance at a title shot. So obviously, I'm sure the perfect ideal dream is to continue winning and make it undefeated to that title shot. But you have secured yourself a far enough place where even if you were to lose at this point, you will get a quicker second opportunity to come back for it. Your next opponent in that bracket will be between either Tyler Birch or Medee or Raymond. Obviously, Medee is a longstanding player like yourself. He's somebody you're familiar with. Tyler Birch, on the other hand, pulled off a victory against a fellow rookie in his first match, and then proceeded into the second round after the unfortunate circumstances of Evan DeGraff having to drop out. We reached a point where it was decided that based on the validity of his performance the first time, we were just going to progress him rather than try and force something there. So that match is obviously yet to happen. That'll be coming up in the next couple of weeks. But who do you think will come out of it? Who do you want to see?
I mean, I don't really know, other than the fact that you're right. I do know Medee from back in the early days of fan leagues and the early days of Battleground, and I back in those days saw him compete, and I think that he's a guy who really can talk. He's really, got strong opinions, and I could see him going forward, and it would be an honor to play him. But I'm sure, Tyler had to do what he had to do to get that first win. And if he's able to take down Mahdi, obviously he's somebody that I need to take very seriously. And I'm just going to take it seriously, especially after how today went. I do think there are elements of my game that I can tighten up. Jordan, any weakness that I had today, he took advantage of that totally. When I didn't have a good argument at any point, he was gonna, take advantage of that. So I'm gonna, tighten up everything that I can and not take, either one of those guys, whichever one comes through, lightly, because if I had taken Jordan any more lightly today, I would have really been hurting.
Absolutely. Well, Jeremy, it was great to see you again, and we look forward to having you back next time in just a little bit. And I know I said it last time, and if it continues each time we add a match, it feels a bit better. But at 3-0 with 2 knockouts, you are still statistically the #1 player in the league. No one left to play can catch you with their records. So congratulations, sir, and we will see you next time on the show. As we'll go ahead and send him to the back and bring in his competitor, Mr. Jordan Owens. And again, obviously a loss is tough. Nobody likes losing. That's not fun. But again, considering Jeremy had been by far the most dominant player we had seen when it comes to his competitors, you did more than Kevin and Alec were able to do put together, in that you didn't just take a point from him. You pushed him to the blind round, and on almost every debate, you pushed him to the limit. At least for me, it was literal individual points and little bits and pieces separating the difference. So how are you feeling?
No, man, as you said, hey, I did my goal. I got him at least in 1, if not 2 rounds. So I'm happy for that. Obviously, I wish round 2 I could redo. That was really my bad. Not having enough for mine and not enough for against his. But even if I did, man, you saw how good Jeremy was. Even if I had a better argument, I don't know if I could have knocked him on that one, nor any round. He came swinging, and there's a reason why he's currently undefeated. So, it's one of those things. I'll take solace in the fact that I lost to someone really good, really awesome. I wish him the best in the future, man. And yeah, no, so still happy to be here. Looking forward whenever you get around to the next one, and someday, Jeremy, rematch.
Absolutely. And you are in the company of some great competitors. That this final 8 in this bracket has been almost entirely a slew of people who have put up great performances. So I'm sure your next match, unfortunately for you, won't be too much easier, but there will be definitely one waiting in the wings for you as soon as we can get it to you. And I look forward to having you back then. Thank you, and we'll see you next time, Jordan.
Thank you.
All right, guys, and that is the end of another great match in the books. Jeremy Adams continuing to build on everything that he did years ago. I've said it once, and I'll continue to say it. For my opinion, off of everything I've seen over the years, he is the best player to have never won the title. And as he continues to push and progress, he is getting closer and closer to shaking that title in the best way possible. However, he could have a challenge in the next round. That remains to be seen. We do still have that one last match in the 1-0 bracket waiting. That will be coming in the next week or two, and it will be Mahdi or Raymond taking on Tyler Birch. With that said, though, guys, we are almost done with the quarterfinals. We are almost into the semifinals, and from there, things begin expanding. Obviously, as I said, everyone who enters the semifinals will be in the title picture to some extent. Obviously, if you lose in the tournament, you'll have an extra couple of matches to put yourself back there, but you'll have that opportunity. And in order to give our competitors who advance time to breathe between matches and not have to go, oh, fuck, I have to turn around and do another one, we're going to begin interspersing non-tournament matches. Some competitors that were eliminated a little earlier on are going to get to come back and have another go and begin building their records, so that once this tournament is over, we can jump back into the regular season and have top players ready to go for that title challenge. With that said, guys, my name is Aaron Knoll. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to rate the video, comment, subscribe, interact with the channel. Tell me what you're thinking about everything that's happening. I want to say thank you to my 2 great judges, Chris Diaz and Chad Webb, for being here with me tonight. And thank you to our great competitors, Jordan Owens, and our winner, Jeremy Adams. On behalf of myself and my fellow producers here at Movie Battleground, my name is Aaron Knoll, and we will see you next time on the Movie Battleground. Take care, everybody.